Okay, so now let's start with the topic. We like to call it intent and context recognition. And this is where we have to really focus on and look at how the structure of the indexing or how the textual index is differentiated in comparison to the RDBMS or relational database. Relational database is typically what we use, like on our desktops. Even Excel sheets are the simplest database. So no need to get into detail with RDBMS. But what is important is to understand that textual database is very different from how the RDBMS is structured. In RDBMS, you're able to connect with a thread that leads you to other variants, or you could say that other fields of information. And with one thread or with one piece of information, you can pull relatively large amount of information. But in textual databases, each and every word or the sentence or the connection between more than one word is considered to be individually considered to be as data sets. Even a single word is a single data set, and when you have more than a few words, you make it into a phrase that also has an attribute attached to it, which makes it a data or a placement of a data in a data field. So everything that is textually laid out or anything that is in the shape and form of a content that could be textual or non-textual. With non-textual, I mean not only just the multimedia, but certain formats like PDF, XLS, and so on. So all those formats or all that content is considered to be the data in the textual sense of how the semantics or textual intelligence works, or how the searched words and search phrases are matched. But that's easier said, but let's just get to some of these examples to give you an idea. And the reason why I'm just giving you this sort of differentiation is only because we are going to focus on semantics, and semantics is artificial intelligence that is very much is totally related to the science of linguistics. Linguistics means that it has to do with language and, of course, the wordings and the sense in which the words are connected together. So we are going to learn a little bit about semantics. And another step that we will take afterwards, after we have dealt with the meaning of semantics, we will understand why certain limitations exist which are inherent in the textual database of search engines. When I say textual database and index, it is more or less the same thing. It's just two different terminologies, but it is exactly the same thing. So let's suppose the textual database itself is going to work with words and connection and start to establish relationship between the sense in which you have used it, or your intent gets translated. And when that starts to happen, there are certain limitations which the search engine is going to start to exhibit, which means that so much control you have with what you have inserted in your search box, and there is a lot more that the search engine is going to impose on you, or the algorithms are programmed in such a way that it has through its own collective wisdom has created a mechanism or a mechanical process which sort of limits the presentation or the delivery of search results, since it is considered to be implied by the search on its own. So as a researcher, someone who has to create very complex search queries or queries which requires a lot of precision, you don't want to waste a lot of time. So to understand those barriers would help you to also learn how to overcome those barriers. So this is why we are going to learn a little bit about semantics to know to what limit or to what extent search engine is going to hold you back or going to interfere with the search results. So let's look at, well, there would be few slides that has got definitions in it, something that you can always read through because we will be giving you the PDFs. In fact, you have it in your inbox. So these certain slides we don't really have to go through. I'm going to be a little bit more objective and look at the actual examples of its working, rather than just go through the definition. So I'll leave that for you to figure out. But let's look at this slide, for instance, to start with. I'll have to keep checking the chat box. Hello, this is Trent, and I just got in. All right, thank you. All right, Trent is in. I'm just going to check the email to see if everybody got in or not.
I have a quick question. What slides are you using?
The slides that we are using are the ones that are in your Dropbox, and see, that's what we covered the first day.
Right.
Let me just go back and show you where it's at.
There was just a bunch of them, so I wasn't sure which one.
Yeah, so let's look at them and see which one we're talking about. And there was a lot more. I would say that there was, where is it? There was something that I mentioned about, just shuffling between slides and adding few slides that I feel comfortable with and I feel that I need to add. So I'll keep doing that and I'll keep putting it in your Dropbox. So let's look at the one that says PowerPoints 1183. Thing is that I don't know why, Eliza, you didn't get that email. Second thing is, here it says PowerPoint, so this is where it's going to be. So the folder name would be CIRS batch 1183, and it would say PowerPoints 1183. So this is where you will find the PDFs. Okay. All right, and there would be a password that you will need. So you will use this password to open it. All right. So I think, I guess once we get done with the class today and you get the opportunity to go through the video recording from yesterday's session, you will get a lot of things cleared with the questions you're asking, so that you can settle down also. It'll give you time to review a few things. And then when we start, there is a day's gap, like we don't have a class tomorrow. So that gives you a little bit extra space for you to go through, what's there in the Dropbox.
Actually, I already started watching some of it. So I actually don't have any questions right now, but thank you. Appreciate that.
Web search intent recognition. I'm going to give you an example with the two words here that says market research. For instance, if this is what we put in the address bar, we are actually inserting a query. See, on the left, it says query. And what happens after that is that the query is going to look at the intent, or it's going to translate what you put in words to give it a meaning or give it a sense in which is understood by the machine. So that is intent recognition. And intent, for example, as in these two words, which are, are much limited, and it does not display or it does not translate the intent. And why is that? Is because it doesn't know if you're looking for a definition or we're looking for a job, as it says, or hiring someone. So market research would have different meaning for the search, and it'll just keep throwing results back at you. The context is what is going to cure that, or it is going to give it the intent or translate your query's objective of what you are looking for exactly. So the context in this case, as it is put in the red fonts, says clearly the word jobs. When you insert that and you put the place or the location where you're looking for the market research jobs, it obviously gives it a better context and give it a sense in which it can be translated by the search. So query, intent, and context. The intent and context, these are the two important things that we will be looking at. And we will see in the next few slides in more detail what part of the context is implied or is assumed by the search, and how much of a context you can add to your search query, and how that context gets interpreted eventually. Going down a little bit, it is obviously going to work with the context. I think we are getting problems, okay, with people not connecting today. We're going to submit a query. The search results would show up. Obviously, we are talking about some predictive or some suggested sort of wordings or search phrases that start showing up as you're typing your search query. So that's only because your intent or context may not be as clear, or it is giving you some sort of a hand holding to find out what wordings would work better. Anyway, that's ABC. Coming down, we've got the results returned back to you. 4 factors we are going to look at as more important and takes precedence over others. And not that these are the factors we are going to limit for the process of ranking, or how the search is going to present those results or those snippets in the sequence in which they're laid out in your search or search engine result pages. But there could be so many more signals, and as we progress, go through some of those context and intent translations, we will find out a few others that are not listed here, but 4 that are more important. One of them is authority, freshness, originality, and popularity. So this is where the search is going to focus on. Authority is, of course, as the word says, is that if that page has a kind of content which is original, or it is coming from a source or a website that belongs to educational institution or a reliable source. Authority would have different meaning depending on the type of website. Then we've got freshness, like how often the content is changed. Originality means that that it is not copied from anywhere. It is something that you've produced on your own. Popularity is the last one, which means that certain words or the connection between words are such and are in so many numbers that it should start to give or make that content page more popular, because a lot of people are accessing it only because there are certain keywords, or the authority is higher, or for whatever reason, if it is searched more often, or if there are external links that are pointing to it, which are more credible or reliable links, it also adds to it. So there are several factors, but popularity, bottom line is that it is the kind of page which is accessed by large majority of people, and so it is popular. Now, before I progress forward with the keywords and search phrases, how they're interpreted, I'd like to go back on some of the topics that we were doing earlier yesterday, but we left it so that we could complete it in this session today. And this is where we were looking at the simulation of how the search engine is going to look at the content page before it indexes it. So some of the attributes or some of the highlighted portion we have actually extracted from a simulation. This is one of the ways that the search algorithms at the time of accessing those pages and bringing them for indexing, it is subjected to some sort of calculation, or you could say certain computations, which is going to extract pieces of information that it thinks are important or which are really required for indexing purposes. So this one, the first one, I think we did already. But as I mentioned to you in the header or the heading of the content page, you have these tags, which we call title tags. There is meta description, meta keywords. We have all discussed it yesterday. So this is the first phase, or you could say the first pieces of information in the HTML code that will be read by the search engine. Total number of words. So this is more like a summary. It is doing its own calculation. And for whatever reason, these numbers are showing right now, we're not interested in that. The idea is to know how the search engine looks at it, the page, so it can extract certain pieces of content, which eventually are going to be the ones that you would be querying when you start to put your keywords or search phrases. So in the next one, we are going to look at some of the extracted text, purely text that's coming from a page that's indexed. And you could see that in the red fonts, we've got stop words, what we call the kind of words which are really not interpreted, or it is not counted, or it's not understood by the search by design. So becoming of, as an example, me, for yours, all these in red are not considered for search to make it appear as if it is part of the phrase, unless you add some operators, which we will talk about later. But for now, let's just look at other words that are not underlined. See, the ones in the black color that are not underlined would work nicely, even if they are considered as single words, because of the higher ranking, for the reason that it is understood to have a meaning which search understands, like account, password, username, and so on. But the ones that you see which are underlined in black color are the kind of words that would start to connect with each other as 2 words, 3 words, or even 4 words. But from what we have learned through simulation is that search engine is very much adamant about translating or giving a meaning to the combination of words that are not more than 3, or at least they are more than 1 word. So between 1 and 3 words, it's going to start to combine it, to give it a sense of, give it a meaning, but not in the sense of how it is written or how the captions are mentioned on the content page. For now, you can look at the words and their combinations as if they're data fields. And there is a semantics of a sort that is designed for only indexing purposes. So we're not going to confuse it with the search. We're just going to look at the indexing process. So let's suppose the words like board members, management team being 4 words, and the fact that they're underlined only means that 2 words can be combined to give it a meaning, or maybe just few words out of the 4, maybe team and member would have a connection. So there could be several different combination. Important thing is that all these words are the kind of words that are considered popular, not as single words, but as group of words. And more so, the algorithms are going to look at 3 word combinations at the most, because there is only so much that indexing process allows for the search to, before indexing to do so, to do this kind of combinations. And then we've got others, which is another set of information, because right now it is grouping, it is extracting, it is organizing, it is making it more granular for the index to start to make sense out of what is being extracted. And the more you learn about how the simulation is interpreting it or how the indexing process works, you will be able to connect the dots later on when we start to create search queries. And why I say that is because, first of all, we are not really doing reverse engineering. And I mentioned it to you before, the idea behind all of this is for you to get the groundwork or at least get the concepts cleared. So when we start to build the search queries and we start to look at some of the limitations and some of the you could say some of the barriers that we need to overcome in order for us to crawl or go through the clutter of filters by using the operators, we understand to what extent the search is going to respond and what type of information we have access to. Now, on the left hand side, there is a table. There are three tables basically right here. There's one on the left and two over here. So just keep watching with the pointer that I'm looking at the column here that says H1 to H4 tags. And what H1, H4, again, I know that we've done this yesterday. So for the search to give a more meaning or understand some of the vital parts or some of the content which may have more importance than others, it is going to use its own intelligence. And this is semantics in the sense of how indexing happens, not in the sense of how the search is going to interpret your search queries. So indexing, at the time of indexing, it is stripping those pages for the captions or headings, and those headings lie in these tags which are named like H1, and it can go to H5. H6 is what I've seen the most. So it's hierarchical. The top heading is H1, the second or secondary heading or subheading to the main would be H2 and H3 and H4. So just because they are tags and containers, search engine knows that these tags have information that needs to be addressed and it needs to be captured and basically put aside for matching purposes. Second, on the right hand side is another set of information we call density, word density analysis. Word density is really the occurrence of certain words on a certain page, the frequency in which it occurs, and if those words have relationship, like it just goes beyond just the number counts. Because you see over here, there is a number of words that's showing on a particular content page. Like the word research has shown up like 35 times, internet 22 times, and so on. Then it is showing the two words that are matched with the numbers of the count that says 10 words, 4 words, 4, and so on. And then these are the 3 words. Now, why is it selective in just bringing a list of certain words and others are ignored, not on account of them being, let's say, stop words, but maybe because they're not as popular, or the grouping is not considered to be more relevant? Again, who knows? You know, it's algorithmically speaking, there could be so many factors that are put into it. But let's assume that certain words or number of words that are showing, in this case, there I think about 10, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these. So it is making those density analysis, like occurrence of those words together as single words or more than 2 words on that same page. It has another factor, which is linked words and non-linked words. At this point, I don't want you to you know, worry about it or even have to understand it for the reason that I will explain later. But for now, not everything that you see here needs to, we need to go deeper or in depth. Word that is more important is density analysis or word density on a single page. Next is that it is also going to put a lot of emphasis and give a lot of importance to the links or URLs that exist on that page. Now, for the reason of or the way that we have understood the 3 layers or 3 different portions of the content page, like the header at the top, the body of text in the middle, and the footer, is because we want to look at all three of them as the content, or together it is a page itself which will be queried, and the type of operators we are going to use is going to also determine the area or the part of that content page that you're going to query. Header versus, so I don't want to keep repeating it, so I'm sorry about that, but Eliza just joined us, so there are a few things that I'm repeating. Anyways, coming to the footer part, which is the part where you have the sitemap or the different pages that are linked to the main home page, for instance, or any of those links that exist for that particular domain is going to show up in the sitemap. And sitemap means links. Links are paths, or gives you the address, or tells the search, or tells the internet where to find certain pages. So it is a path that is leading someone to those particular pages. So once you look at the URLs, you know that certain pages can be queried through the advanced operator. It's called in URL. We are going to discuss it in more detail, but the relevance of using in URL is more important at times when you are trying to do quick searches. Just go and reach out to certain pages for which you have the let's say you remember the name of the title of the page, or you remember the folder and the domain name you remembered. So certain things that you already know of and you want a quick search, you will be querying the URLs, and URLs are collected at the time of indexing, and most of it is collected from the footer part. A lot of navigations, especially the site link navigations, are actually combined together and placed in the footer part. And then there are other links which takes you to the social media, and other references that are there also have links. So a lot of links exist at the footer, and at the same time it is actually going to collect all the links, even from the body of text and the header part. So in essence, anything that is collected as the URLs will have two components. One is the link address itself, as you can see right here. And the second aspect is because it is only going to look for the words or find the titles. Any information that is textual is going to be read. So for that reason alone, you have to know that it is going to look at the words or the connection or the title of the page that is attached to these links. And on the right hand side, it is showing attached to any of these links, you'd see these wordings. It is giving an indication that the words used here are basically the type of information that exists in, let's suppose, the title part, or anything that is defining the page. So if the wordings like AOFIRS management, like right here, needs to be queried, you can do that. If the relationship has to be created between the words that define that link or is attached to the link in terms of the title, then it would give you the opportunity to use in URL to find these wordings which are part of the title as well. So this is how it is going to hash it out and start to create that opportunity for you to use that in URL operator. And then the links have its own worth and its own importance depending on the type of links or the type of URLs we are talking about. First of all, the page that you're looking or the one that says summary of internal links, it's just the numbers that are defining the words which exist in the URLs, like how many times the word AOFIRS association is occurring in URLs. The count is 82. So never mind this, but what I'm getting to is the type of links right now, is the type of URLs which can be queried by using in URL, or even by using there could be simpler ways of getting to the URLs directly. But I'm using in URL as an example, or to give you a reference to a certain operator. So when we are using operators like those which are querying the links itself, then we have to also know what type of links we are looking for, or what type of information exists that is attached to a single domain. Or let's suppose if you want to know how many of those links that belong to your website are not coming directly from your website, instead they're being referenced, or they're the kind of links that are pointing to your website from another website. So for that reason, and in the sense of how the search engine optimizers or the marketer people are looking at making their pages popular for their client, they would like to know how many links are coming or pointing to those web pages of their client or to that particular domain from outside. And this obviously is something that has a lot to do with making those clients' web pages more popular for the search engine to know that there are others or other people they're referring or they're pointing to it. So for that reason, external links are important for you. And when we start to build these search queries, and there is a reason for us to look for links that are outside of our web page, but it is pointing what kind of query. So those queries that we'll build are for external links versus internal links, which we can find for whatever reason we are looking for. As an example, if it is a very huge website and you're looking for a certain article and you only know few words, but for the words that you're going to use, you need to also ensure that if you are to query a URL, those words actually are sitting there somewhere, either in a subfolder, main folder, or as a landing page title. So if you have that information, you would be able to query through direct search for those articles without having to go through the navigations or getting into the archives. You can directly be able to fetch that page by querying it through the URL, because URL is what is going to connect that page, and any information that is worded and placed inside of those URLs will make it easy for you to get those pages. All right, so I think this is what was left before, and we've completed this part. Unless you have a question about simulation of how the indexing happens, we can continue with.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so if all the information is listed in the footer section, how do you so let's say your website, it has a member section where you have to be a member in order to access that information. So yes, are you saying that that information is technically still listed in the footer?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that any of the links that are available on the content page will be captured at the time of indexing. So as far as the members are concerned, or if there is a link that is taking someone to a page that probably requires a registration or requires some sort of authorization or a password, it would have something on that page that's called no follow links. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, but let me finish. So when you have a no follow link, that means that this is the section, or this is the area beyond which you would not be able to get through even if you use any URL. And at the time when you are trying to access something, or for people who are hackers, or who are trying to rig those links or address bars to get into or behind that URL part, what they would do is that go to that last page where there is a no follow link and try to rig that. There is a lot of people who are actually experts in doing that. So that's how they break into it. So URL is what really sort of allows for people to actually get access to behind the curtain, all those private databases and things of that sort. Just so you know that no follow link is the culprit, and that's where you end up using that query to find that last page, and from that last page onwards, you can design some sort of query to allow you to break through or get into it.
I'm not looking to be illegal.
Yeah,
I was just wondering.
No, I'm not teaching. Yeah, let's just stick to the spirit of the reason why I'm explaining it, because thing is that it's good to know, get some extra knowledge. Not that we are going to do the hacking or something. I don't even know how to hack things. I can't even teach you that. And even if I knew, I'll get caught very quickly. The other day I was just playing with it. There is a process, it's called Google dorking. Google dorking means that you're going to start to play with the, all those different sort of alphanumeric characters that appear in the address bar when you're doing Google searches. There is, notation and funny things that you start moving them. And there was a reason behind it. So I was just like sort of figuring out a few things, trying to improve the search process by, creating some really complex queries. And then all of a sudden my screen went red and Google sent me a notice, said that you're doing some activities which we are not aware of and this and that. And it took me 9 days to get them to take me off of that. And for the reason, for the simple reason that I was just, sort of just changing few things at the top. And so I'm just letting you know that even if you have no intentions, there are so many checks these days that somehow you get into the trap of, or you unintentionally get caught on the wrong foot.
So oh my gosh.
Yeah, it happens. And it has happened to me more than once. And now they know me. So that's the good thing. And now it's okay. Now let's look at intent, context, and contextual meaning. Fortunately, with the time, how the time flies, it goes so fast. I have so much to cover. We have 30 hours really, but considering the volume of the course, and sometimes, we have to give it a little bit of extra time for, just, we are not robotically programmed. So, sometimes we can't catch up with some of the topics. And then what will happen, and I'll let you know ahead of time, is that we might end up adding maybe a class or two, maybe 2 to 4 hours extra. So be prepared for that. If that happens, still not a huge problem for me, but because you are all committed in so many different ways, there could be a situation. We always have recordings. So
no problem for me neither.
Okay. All right. So let's look at some of these. Well, I know that you understand the meaning of intent and context. Just literally just translating it in the language, you know what it means. But let's look at some of the variations or some of the ways that prevent the search engine to understand the intent, even if you have expressed it correctly, or if it is linguistically correct. It happens like if I'm asking a question, I would probably phrase it differently than somebody else, and whoever is listening may interpret it differently as well, only because we've used different words. So this is typically the problem with searching, and that's why it has like a drop down. It sort of nudges you, it helps you to look for better search phrases and so on. I feel so bad today taking this class with so many people not attending it, and I now sensing the reason, same thing that Trent went through, probably everybody else is having an issue as well. So I owe it to all those that have not attended to be able to somehow deliver what they've missed. And I'll try to attempt to do that. So, for that reason only, I'm just like kind of feeling like a culprit. But thing is that, I mean, you'll all agree to this, right? Except for Eliza, she wasn't here. Yesterday, I mentioned to everyone that I will be blamed eventually. And the reason I told you is because we are changing the scheduling, and I'm sending this list and I'm adding it to the Dropbox. What happened actually after that I took the responsibility, I made those changes, I uploaded it where I only have the access to, or I'm authorized to access your Dropbox. And I did that. So my part got done. And then somebody else somehow thought, or maybe knowing some of my habits, it's like I'm forgetful sometimes, I have things to do. So maybe they thought they're doing me a favor. What they did is they uploaded another list, or somehow my list was there alongside another one. So that's what I noticed right before we started this class, and I deleted that one, and that probably did the. So I've explained it on record right now. So anyone who's going to look at this tomorrow would know what has happened, and we'll make it up to all of them. Two type of context that we would be discussing. One is explicit, the other one is implicit. Implicit is where the trouble is. Explicit is what we express in terms of words that we use and the query that we build. So we basically are forcing the search to find something which we know of, or we know what we require, and that is explicit. And implicit is what is implied by the search, because it uses its own wisdom, it has its own algorithms which assume and which sort of delivers results which they think, or the search thinks. I'm going to use search as if it's a person, just for ease of explaining things. So search thinks that it has the ability to deliver a better quality of results only because it understood a certain explicit meaning and added a context to it, which it thought that would work nicely with the explicit expression that you have created in your search. So that is the difference between explicit and implicit. Implicit is what we will be, as I mentioned, discussing. Explicit has two components to it. There is a primary context and a secondary context. We use primary context and secondary context in so many different ways, depending on when we start to do our online research, especially on the investigation side. There are certain words that we feel that cannot be replaced, or for us to delegate some sort of work to our colleagues or any of our researchers, we need to define it. There is a form that we have to create that gives columns and gives instructions for selecting certain primary context, or adding primary context, or adding certain words, or not to add certain words. Basically, it's the instruction set that says that you cannot play with certain words, or certain phrases has to remain intact, because without them, it would just kill the intent of the query, or it would just sort of mess up the query results. And there is a natural tendency in all of us as humans, we have this where we start to play with words, and if we are especially not getting the correct results, we sort of juggle with those wordings, and at times it drags us in different directions, especially if your time is money, and that's what you're charging your clients. It's your time, and you don't want to waste it, and therefore you have to give very clear-cut instructions. And for that reason, primary and secondary context is important. Secondary context means that you can change things, you allow certain leverage to the researcher when you're delegating. You're telling as part of the instructions, you specify certain words which are considered secondary, or the kind of words that can be switched, changed. You also have to express whether the words can be eliminated totally, or they can be substituted. Would there be additional words that you can add, similar words? So you have to give those clear-cut instructions, and you have to define if these are secondary words. So that's the play area. That's where you allow people to do different things. So that's the difference between primary context and second. So I'm not going in exact definitions, and I don't really believe in definition. The concept needs to be understood, and that it should be the spirit of the lectures that I'm delivering. Next slide is going to explain the explicit signals first, or the ones that you are defining, in the same sense of how we have used or identified primary and secondary contexts. We are going to get a little bit more granular in terms of how certain words in a certain phrase that you probably are going to break down a little bit more into additional components, or some more components. That's what this slide is going to explain to you, and how it is done, and what are the different wordings we use. If I may ask Eliza, just so that we get introduced like everybody else, we all know each other, where we are coming from, our objective for taking the course, for different reasons. And if you care to just give us a little bit of background, maybe there would be occasions where I can express a few things with more clarity, knowing that it would be more useful for you or for your profession. For that reason.
Sure. So I'm a senior paralegal for a large franchisor, and the litigation side of the legal department. And I find myself most daily having to find former franchisees that we need to sue and serve with papers. Need to find out if they have assets. Sometimes people can.
So you're responsible for creating the trouble, eh? You're the one who collects all that.
Yes, it's me.
All right. Because thing is that some of us, some of your colleagues, right? Call them colleagues because we're in the same class. They're also coming from similar background, if not exactly the same. And it seems that investigative research is sort of the area which requires a lot of online research. And for that reason, building search queries, doing due diligence, background checks, and so on. That could be something for which you have signed for, or the reason for your signing for CIRS. So fair, I mean, I know exactly now. And I guess who else is paralegal? Is it Vicky? Vicky, OSINT? Is it not Vicky? Sorry.
That's me. Yeah, I'm also at a law firm doing research.
Yeah, so Kelly is got a similar background. Anyway, so let's look at these.
I am also a lawyer. I'm also a lawyer, and
Daniel, you didn't tell us that before.
Yes, I was so very timid in my presentation before, but yes, I'm a lawyer. I have worked some with forensic.
I see.
And it's very important for me, this course, because I really like to know a lot of things about forensic research and investigation in general. But also I am close to, I don't remember his name, Mark, the journalist.
Yeah, Mark is, he's a writer, journalist.
I am also a philosopher by formation, and I have to do a lot of research in different topics, and data journalism is pretty interesting. That's why those books you give us is very, very interesting for me too. So yes, and I'm looking forward, as I mentioned, to create a business, a complex business in research, because I also think this has a lot of future. So
thank you very much for that input, Daniel. That's great, because I wrote a book on online investigative research. I placed it in the Dropbox, and that sort of sets a tone for us to enter into the next area of specialization. As an association, we are now treading deeper into this area, and we find that There could be certain, I would say there could be bridges that we can build between OSINT and the online investigative research, sort of, create a combination of a course that could be really helpful. And so that Eliza knows, if you go in your Dropbox, you will find there is a book, which is, the title is Online Investigative Research. You would find that very interesting and very useful. There'd be reference guides that would certainly help you in finding your way through, looking at some of the important softwares, utilities, specialized search engines, forensic tools, and so on. So that's a lot of information in your Dropbox. When you get to it, you'll really find it useful.
Wonderful.
And I will put a lot of emphasis on certain type of investigative research queries. And at the same time, I understand as a journalist, writers, anyone who are, looking to, not for the reason of investigation alone, but let's say collecting the information generally, I would be able to present some of the applications or software that work really nicely in doing that collection work. Which is what is going to interest me a lot more than just going through the queries alone, because there would be things that I would miss out, or I wouldn't really, they're not part of the course, let's say, but I will just sort of bring them in to make it really work, alongside what we are learning right now.
Right.
So that is going to be in the back of my mind. Now let's look at explicit signals. We are going to look at how, when we are doing our research here, as I mentioned to you, we have to delegate. When we delegate the work, we really have to be very specific about the search phrases. And the wordings is what we are after, really. I mean, it's not the query alone, it's just selection of words and their combinations. Bottom line is, it needs to be hashed out so that we can actually pinpoint certain words as if those words are kosher, or they're the kind of words that you can play with, or you can change, or you can add to. So let's look at the scenario that we're presenting here. And this means that you will just look at the pointer and not at whatever is surrounding, because we'll just be identifying each element of components one by one. Let's look at 3 words here. I don't want you to mind things like, vertical, these vertical bars don't have a meaning in the sense of building a query. It has nothing to do with that. So I'm just letting you know, this line, people ask questions. I mean, before, get into the interruption of why it is a dash or why it is a vertical bar, just ignore it. Let's just follow the arrow. 3 words in the search box: Internet Research Certification. And this is used as an example, and it is the simplest example that is shown as it's just an illustration. So it could be more than 3 words. So starting with 3, the first one I'm calling the head word, or the one in blue color, means that this is the kind of word that I don't want it to be changed. Like supposing if I do change it or eliminate or edit this, or for some reason just do away with it, the 2 words I'm left with is research certification, and that really sort of changes the meaning of, or the intent of search is totally defeated. So therefore, internet is the primary word, or it is the keyword, or it is the anchor word, or it is the head word. Let's just call it a head word, not to cause confusion, but head word is not to be changed. Second word I'm calling a modifier, which means that I need to identify it for the reason that I'm allowing anyone to make changes or to substitute this word. They are not a modifier. You're not allowed to eliminate. Modifier means that you can modify the word by using some synonyms or replacement, but you don't really get rid of it. And then the third one we call tail word, or the kind of words that you actually are given the option to add to it, to change it, or really eliminate it totally. So tail is more flexible than head and modifier. We hash it out, we give it so that we want the researcher to make sure that they don't play too much with the head and a modifier. But the tail, they can add more context to. Tail is really, in fact, if you look at in the sense in which it is used, tail is really giving better context or better meaning to the first two words. So tail is really supporting the head and a modifier. Similarly, a modifier is supporting the head. Head is what is constant. So tail, you can add more words to, and you can eliminate. Now, let's look at the second one, which is more than 3 words. I've used or added another word. You will notice it's the word course, and it's in the purple color. And see how the head and the modifier shifts. So we do build the progression of how the search is going to follow in case if the first one doesn't work, follow on the second one, where I'm allowing for the researcher to combine the first and the second word and make it into a head. That means head itself cannot just be one single word. It could be 2 words, group of words, or more than 2 words. It just depends on how I group them or how I treat individually as a single word. So if I am in the second zone or under in the second layer, I've combined these together. So this has become a head word. A modifier automatically shifts, which means that now the modifier is going to be the tail word, and that tail is certification, and because it has become a modifier, it can be substituted. So this is like a chemistry formula, like you can do few changes, you know, you are writing a prescription of some sort. So these are really instruction sets. So if you understand what I mean, I don't I've had questions like there would be someone asking me, why do we need all this? Like, what is the reason for this? I mean, there could be primary words or secondary words, and that should be enough. There was another question that says that what if I bring this word on the left, this word on the right? The idea is to give you a concept, and the objective of this exercise, as I mentioned to you, is really to give instructions in a better format, or in a instruction in a way that it is flexible enough that you can play with it and tweak those words. What happens, supposing, as an example, you give certain set of words to someone, and then all of a sudden it comes back, says, you know, it's not working well for me, and then you start changing the entire script or change the entire word, and that exercise sort of, you know, again starts to happen with a new sets of wording. So that's not consistent, that's not constant, that is not something that is you know, the kind of instructions that we would like to give out, only because we want to save time and we want to be very sure. So the primary words or the head words, we are very careful about. We test it out ourselves first before we hand it over to others for doing the search. Now, as you could see, the last word, which is course, now that you know the difference between 1 and 2, you could see that the word course is added to the first 3 words. And this word course is a new tail word, and you can add more context and better context by adding more tail. You can add as many tail words if you want, but as long my modifier and head words are understood, I don't mind it. And that's where I am with the differentiating between 1 and 2. And by the way, in the sense of how the terminology is used, we call a certain number of words short tail, which means that these are not so many words, or these are not focus words. I'm sorry, these are more focused words, and therefore it would bring a lot of search results just because it is not extensive enough, or you could say that it does not have a lot of tail words to it, so the context is less. In other words, it's less words and you'll get a lot more results. For obvious reasons, it's not explicit enough, probably. Okay, and that's why we call it short tail. And there's a cat with a short tail, as you know, even if you look at visually, you can tell that it's a short tail. And then you've got the long tail right here. And this long tail means that these are more than a few words. These are the, there is a lot of context added to it, and therefore it will give you better search results or bring more precision results and less results. That's all. So coming to the implicit signals, this is where I would like to explain to you the limitations, or where the demarcation of the ability of search engines exist, which we might as researchers be able to overcome. And at times we look at it as a barrier because it sort of creates a bias for us. And with the limitations that are imposed, or you could say the kind of influence that the search has on search results, that we don't want as an interfered result, or for us to be able to get more of a neutral search results, we would first of all recognize what are the implicit signals, or what is the information that is collected, which plays a large part in the search to assume certain things and bring those results or impose those results on us. So let's look at the list. We'll just go one at a time. Let's look at the general signals or overall view. And then we have a very nice chart that's going to explain to you the barriers at different stages, or the different categories of information that is collected on long-term searches and short-term searches. Because, eventually you will appreciate all this knowledge, because what I figured and how I work personally is that I create another sort of account with the search engines, talking specifically about the browsers. Okay, so let's suppose if it's a Chrome browser, I have to do a lot of browser adjustment to neutralize the information it has collected from my research prior, or some long-term information that's been collected and might have an influence in search result. I want to get rid of that, and it's not easy to just erase all that information. Somehow it is collected in different stages at different levels. Some of the information lives actually inside of the browser. A part of it goes to the search engine, and within search engine there is another set of information which is again another process, another set that remains intact, or there is like a thread that is created and it's very hard to get rid of. So I create those I build those adjustments into the browsers, and I have got few accounts that are purely meant to be used for certain type of searches. At the same time, I use different browsers for different reasons. Like certain browsers I use to query something which is, let's say, across US or North America. I want to go to Eastern Europe to find certain research papers, which otherwise I have to pay for a lot of money, and it may not be enough information, because we all know, I mean, like it's a global world right now. There shouldn't be any barriers as to limitation of what information is given to us only because we are browsing from a certain location, or we are limited only because we are in North America. So that bias and all that kind of. So just to clear it all out, we have few options. One of them is to find another browser that would deliver better results, better than Google. So the reason I'm making this claim is not to be used as a blanket claim. It's for specific resources and for specific reasons. So if I have to look for information on projectiles, and that is coming from, it has its roots in defense industry, or rocket propulsion, something scientific as an example, I would rather prefer to go and find some research papers, or better or kind of papers that are not that doesn't require security clearance. So I would go and use a browser called Yandex. I would use it for building queries to find information from Eastern European countries, because Yandex is really popular over there. Similarly, if I have to find a product or services in China, I would prefer to use Baidu. Baidu is another search engine which brings a lot of results from China. Translating the result language, no longer a barrier anymore. Then we've got, other browsers. Like, you'd be surprised in Japan, Yahoo is a big deal. Like, Yahoo is big over there. It is a preferred search engine, better, more preferred than Google search engine in Japan. So, I mean, all those things. So there could be 10 different things we could do. We could even translate certain words into a language of our choice and then insert it in a search bar in Google while sitting in North America. Just the fact that I have chosen to translate something in another language, I just sort of compared the search results. I inserted that query in Ukrainian, for instance. I've been working a little bit on the Ukrainian, sort of information set. So I'm going to be referring to Ukraine a lot more. So the results I got were slightly different from what I got in North America, only because I used the English language for my search phrases. And that sort of started to give me with clarity the bias that we can see. With the news sources, for instance, Mark, I got news sources coming from Ukraine or Ukrainian news sources. Even some of the news agencies which are global, for instance, CNN, would give us a story here that depending on the language I've used, if it's Ukrainian, it could be a Ukrainian version, and the content would be slightly different. The views would be different, obviously, compared to the language, the English language that I have used just to query. Again, doing it from US, not sitting in Ukraine, and not changing my browser. So that's just to cover a few things quickly. Go ahead, please.
All right, just a quick question. When you were saying before how you will use different browsers to set up different queries, wouldn't using, say, for example, incognito in Chrome do the same thing, since it's in a private, it's a private?
No, actually, see, session? Thing is, sure, that's a good question. So for clarity, a few things I would like to also mention, and I'm glad you asked this, because I just remember another fact which forgot to explain. Incognito is a mode which allows for the search engine to let you browse anonymously without disclosing your or without capturing the search history. Just remember that. Everything else is recorded. Incognito knows that you're searching for certain things, you're using. So it's just a mode. And then for your information, there is a difference between a search engine and a browser. Like, many people have a notion that DuckDuckGo, for example, it's really not a search engine. It's a browser, right? And it's a browser that doesn't disclose your IP addresses. Okay, it doesn't disclose your history. It doesn't record your history. So incognito is somewhat similar to that. So it is a mode, it is a function, but it's not a concealment of certain type of information that would remain to be, let's say, neutral, or would not disclose where you're browsing from. The only thing it will hide is your history, like your short-term browsing, your long-term browsing, and it is also discoverable by anyone that, let's suppose you're going for purchasing something using incognito or DuckDuckGo to buy something on Amazon. Okay, the Amazon knows that you're using DuckDuckGo and it knows where you're browsing from. Okay, your ISP knows. So it is a notion which should be very clear and crystal clear in your mind, is because there is only certain aspects of information that can be concealed, and for the reason where you have intentions, or let's suppose you have intentions to really be totally anonymous. The place where you're buying something from won't know. What you bought, nobody else would find out, like total blackout of your information, then you have to go to darknet. And darknet has got its own kind of, now they have a software, I think, and the government is using it. What's the name of that? Forgot the name of it, but they're coming very close to also able to discover, you know, if what's happening on the darknet side. So, you know, it's like it's a public network, but there are certain ways, certain concealments that you can do to a certain extent, and the extent to which you want to hide yourself or your information will depend on your choice of or the objective of your search. So if you really want to hide totally, then use Tor. You know, go to the darknet. They have their own browsers, like the kind of browsers that you can select. They are different. By the way, did you know that browsers are basically an open source software? Originally, the browser software was created for anyone who would like to customize it. So the basics or the working of a browser is really been created like 20 years ago, and it is the you know, the kind of technology that have existed, and people are using it. Like I can create my personalized browser if I want to, and it'll take me 3 days to do it. A lot of components are already built and you have to combine it together. It is the value add that comes from it is from the search engine, like the indexes that you can query. Next thing is the real estates, the value of collecting you know, revenues from allowing people to put their ads there, you know, things like that. So for the differentiation between incognito, I would say that it is a mode. Selecting a browser is really accessing the search engine environment, which is going to be different. So if Yandex we are talking about, it is a search engine. It's not just a browser. DuckDuckGo is a browser. Firefox is a browser. It's not a search engine, for example. Baidu is a search engine. It's not a browser. But the search engines have, normally all search engines have browsers, whereas all browsers may not be search engines. So if that concept is clear, it's easy to understand. Is that information enough? Was it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Great. No, I appreciate it because I was just kind of curious.
So this will clear up your mind about, you know, all these things, claims people make and things they do with how they present it. Now, implicit signals are most important. What are implicit? Implicit signals are location, search history. You can just read the list. I just don't want to, I hate it when I just have to read things which are already there in front of you. So read it through. It's just a general snapshot of implicit signals. And these are the signals that are collected automatically. Some of the information you will find surprising, like how would search engine collect information from your calendar? Would you imagine? Why would somebody do that? It's not, I mean, the privacy policy should cover it for you, wouldn't it? Like, I mean, I wouldn't want my calendar information, my appointments to be disclosed. Purchase history, find favorites, my bookmarks. Why would they need my bookmarks? A valid question, something that I would obviously want to dig in deeper and find out to what extent they are collecting this information. Why we have all these listed is not only because all of the information that somehow belongs to these areas of information is collected. There could be certain portions of it, like from your calendar, only the usage information is collected, like how frequently you use it as a consumer, as a customer. Is it worth for let's say Chrome to improve on it? Is it collecting enough momentum from users to you know, to diversify or for any sort of notes or responses they're getting, or there is any bugs? All those reports are collected. So that is a limitation for collecting information from the calendar. But just by reading it, you'd say, oh, so they know who, where my appointment is at and when I'm going where and so on. So, but that's not the case. But this is just the general information that it is going to look for. Location of users, for sure, they would know exactly where you are at. Even your mobile phones have that chip in it. It's a GPS chip. Simplest technology, you can put it in somebody's pocket and that should be enough. If it has got little power, it'll tell you where this person is walking or going. So, you know, that's no big deal. The only exception, the only important part here to notice is that to what extent this information is utilized by the search algorithms so that it influences the search results. That's the bottom line. That's where we are going to get to. Now, let's look at two types of context. One is the explicit and the other one is implicit. And these two components or two, I can call it two bars at the top, are going to separate areas like the one that I'm showing you here with my arrow, that this area under the heading explicit context under this box is where we are going to identify the two types of explicit context. Very simple, but a question, anything you wanted to ask?
I had a question.
Yes.
So with the browser like collecting everything, would a VPN, if you have that installed on your computer, would that stop that process?
You mean using the browser with the VPN?
Yeah.
No, because
Okay.
VPN is a point-to-point connection.
Okay.
I don't mind explaining it, Eliza. Don't worry about it. Just listen to it. If it makes sense, it'll only add to your, and then somebody asks you, in fact, you would be in a position to actually tell people what it is. And these concepts are obvious. Clearly, these concepts are commonly misunderstood. So why not, you know, get to the bottom of it? So when we talk about VPNs, it's a point-to-point connectivity in network terms, which means it is a solid connection which guarantees the packet's delivery of information from one point to another and in a more secure and encrypted way, which means if somebody sort of breaks into the wires or the wireless communication, whatever the case, and then tries to capture that information by tapping into that or sort of breaching that, they won't be able to make sense out of it. So it's encryption. That is why we use VPN. VPNs are most common for the businesses and for the kind of use that has just come up where the IP addresses are playing a large part in identifying somebody's access to certain information or limiting, like Netflix and so on. But the main question that you have about VPN is for the browsing. Now, when you are using a VPN, you are basically still not, while you're connecting to another server somewhere remotely, you are still asking that server to connect you to the internet gateway. Internet gateway, you know. Internet gateway is the gatekeeper which opens up the internet for you to be able to browse everything that's out there. So even if it's a VPN you're using, you may be connected to a server, let's say sitting somewhere in China, and with the browser that you're using sitting in US, you may be connected to that server, but the browser is going to take you through the gateway onto the internet from China. So the best that is going to come or is going to be the benefit for you is to somehow simulate as if you are locally sitting somewhere in China and browsing from that location. But the internet or the gateway is going to only open up for you to be able to browse, even if it's a VPN. It'll require that. All right, context types and forms two. First, let's look at these ones. Let's suppose I'm using a word Java. Java could mean three things. It could be a coffee island or a software. To give it a primary context, I need more than one word. Always we are using more than one word. Generally, I would say rather, some people just use one word. For for the reason of explaining or making it more explicit, I'm going to add a primary context. And there's 3 boxes that you see under primary context are the 3 versions or 3 choices. So any of these boxes you're looking at, these are considered choices or combination of choices, and I'll show you how. So let's suppose if it's a Java and I connect it with the word software, I'm giving it a primary context, meaning I'm not going to be able to remove the word software or the word Java, and therefore it definitely is going to stay there for my search query. So Java software, for instance, when I write or type Java software in the search box, you will notice that the results will start bringing you certain snippets that may not be compliant to your intent or would not be translating the intent. And that means that you're falling short on the context. For example, what it is bringing is words like training, as if you are asking Java software training, or you're asking Java software program. So depending on what type of secondary context you want to give, sometimes we are not able to make, see, first of all, we can never make a perfect search query. Anytime we want to solidify our search in order to bring the precision results, we need to look at the first phase or the first results that show up with what we have used for search. And when we start to notice certain words or certain contexts in which the search is translating your intent, we may make a choice of eliminating the occurrences of those in order to make it or to filter it out or make it better search. So we would again will be using a second layer of queries which we will bring or add to improve on the previous one, and that is a process. So it's never like a one event anyway, unless you're just doing fact find just one search. So if it is a secondary context, we are talking about training and a program. Similarly, if it's coffee and we are writing Java coffee, it would turn up results that says Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons in Canada is very popular. None of you are in Canada, just so you know. So Tim Hortons is showing up as a coffee house. Then there could be a word coffee bar or coffee beans. So between these 3 words, you can assume and or sort of make it even better by eliminating some of them. Now let's go and look at how the search engine is delivering the search results. And we are going to use one example at a time. So starting with Java software, supposing we select or we are looking for the training, somewhere. So Java software training will start to bring results that would add the location. So the location or the localization of such results will show up anything close by that is a training center for Java software, the pricing, the reputation, let's say, of that institution. So that's going to show up. So all these are somewhat, we call them intent semantics or implicit context. I keep introducing some more terms in between, not to confuse you, but really so you know that people sometimes can use alternative words. So let's suppose sticking to implicit context, it has added local location, it has added price, it has added reputation. In coffee, again, if we have to look for Tim Hortons only, then it's going to start showing up local locations, store hours, and so on. So the implicit context is what is added by search, or it's assumed by search based on certain signals, which we call implicit signals. And those could be long-term or short-term collection of information that would influence that particular type of search results. Apart from the IP address, the implicit and the implicit signals have so many dimensions, and I'll give you a list. Some of these are showing here, like implicit factors we call. The language could be an implicit factor, word semantics, of course, that's given, cultural barriers, certain set of information or words you don't want to use, or some people are more sensitive about certain words, certain cultures, censorship, geopolitical, privacy. There's a huge list of it. So these are implicit factors at a more global or a broader level. Now let's get back behind the engine and look at how the browser is collecting implicit or assuming implicit information to play a part in search results. Okay, so this is just a continuation of what we did earlier. No biggie. Going to not do this one. Query refinement is a process, as I told you. So, example is shown here. A jaguar word itself could be a cat or a car. So first search result will give you certain information and certain type of or certain volume of information which could be pertinent or would relate to your objective of your search or may not. So you have to eliminate those words. The use of word selection of words would play a part, like automobile versus car. So if you have used a Jaguar car instead of automobiles, there could be a difference in the quality of results. If these are more popular words, more prevalent and interchangeable, perhaps you want to make a choice in order for you to find the most relevant one. And because this is just an example, there could be several situations where words would matter, and selection of words might be or there could be synonyms which may not be as effective, or certain words that you may want to change totally. So automobile versus cars, depending on the results. And if you want to do local search, you use power words. Power words are the words like local, the words like near me. I'll show you what those words are, so you have a list of it, and you would know, in order for you to shorten your query and give it a better meaning, you'd rather be using those words. One of them is local and the other one is near me, that we will come back to later. You can use the word price or use a notation with a dollar sign. So this is just a process that is giving you giving you an idea of a single session when you're doing your searches that can go in different phases depending on your search results A through F. This is how it is explained in these boxes. You could see that you're only improving or refining your search, but it is all being recorded. And this is the short term query, or you could rather, I'd say, like a session that is not broken or session that is in continuation. So if you have logged into your Chrome and you are doing some searches, while you are still logged in, you've left the premises or coming back to it after a while, even after a few days, doesn't matter. As long as the session is on, you have not logged out, it is a short-term session. And the type of information that is collected in short-term has a large part of influence in your next search queries that you're going to build. It'll start influencing your search results. So it's a good idea usually just to log out anytime you have browsed, you found the information, or you feel that you need to come back and continue with it, then leave it open. But know that short-term sessions would have an influence in your next search as you continue. Some of the wordings that we call context, or the power context, or some of the type of words that are understood by the search engine as if it has a list of it, as if it recognizes them and has built a relationship on its own. Like, for example, if I'm writing a number and that number is a zip code in US, and let's suppose the zip code for Florida I use more often is 32835 for Orlando, Florida. It would know that these numbers are not mathematical expression in any way. It is considered to be a zip code. It is assumed the first preference of the search engine would be the implied factor that contains enough information about zip codes all across US to match it against those numbers and to assume that this is a zip code. Even if you don't type it as a zip code, it's going to appear as it's going to be considered a zip code. On the other hand, if it's a mathematical expression, make sure that you use it the way it's supposed to be done mathematically, with your notations and all that. But coming back to it, words like location, it knows that you are looking for something at a certain location. Area code, like the ones in blue color, are all about locations or all about identifying the source, like city near me. I mean, these are like basic stuff, like basic words, but they are very powerful for the only reason that search recognize it in a certain way. Something that you want translated, converted, you use the word convert, that's good enough. you don't have to write like stop words in, onto, or equal to, or versus. You don't really make model. If you put make dash model, it knows its make and model. It's going to give you both. These are the collection of words that we know of. There could be so many more, so it is not a conclusive list, but it is to give you an idea of certain wordings that would have an impact in delivering your search results, like date dash range. There is another operator that allows you to give a date range, including day, month, and a year. So it could be as precise as you want. So don't get me wrong. Date dash range, the word itself is for those who don't know how to use those operators. So they might just use it, but it won't really bring as precise results. However, it'll understand it to a certain extent that you are looking for something. That could be a price, or that could be a date. So if it's a price, the word price dash range, it knows you're looking for a price range. Date dash range, it is, what it is. And then all these are there in the slide, so don't have to go through each one of them, but know that these are the contextual words which are understood or implied understanding that search engine has. The chart that I wanted to share with you here is talking about search history data. So like I mentioned, there is a short-term history, as I told you about a single session or while you are still searching or browsing and you're not logged out, so that you understand. But what is a long-term or a long-term history, and what type of impact it has on your search result? Long-term history is partially collected on the other side, on search engine side. So that sort of, is your footprint. It is a mark that connects you with the search engine as a consumer. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is that a certain portion of it is actually collected and resides within the browser. It does not get erased even if you do clear browsing history. Long-term history is in terms of how long or how how far back it goes time-wise. Can go as far as months. We don't know the exact formula. All we know is that the long-term history is all about you, some of your very, very, I would say, very strong footprints that the search engine recognizes. And that could be one of these things. Let's look at the itinerary of what is the different types of histories that is collected. Now, I'm not going to distinguish too much about short-term, but long-term is what I will identify. Now, internet browsing data is one set of information, okay? And this is where we are using this chart to divide or categorize set of information. So these boxes are representing those areas. Internet browsing data collection, then we've got profile and personal information, and then communication data like your emails, chats, social media accounts, and so on. Starting with internet browsing history, it is going to include, as it is mentioned in the list, and it could be short-term and long-term. So search history in terms of context when it comes to browsing data are inclusive of all of these. Some of these attributes that are mentioned in the bullets can be long-term or partially long-term or completely part-term, completely short-term, depending on your session. The date and time spent of timestamp of your browser, it is a long-term history. It gives a footprint about yourself, your behavior, time that you spend, time of the day that you are browsing most. And so for the reason of marketing, or they call it what, user experience improvement, and so all kinds of words they use, but they collect all this. A browsing history, the language use history, you just keep counting it. Unless you want me to stop and explain something, I'll give you a few minutes to read it through, so you understand that what is the browsing data collected here. Okay, now the next, let me see if there's anything I feel that is worth explaining. Imagine your Google Docs, sheets, slides, third-party utilities, you have accessed all this information software that you have downloaded, all that information is collected. A lot of this information you give away because the privacy policy you gladly, sort of acknowledge, and there are these wrapping or wrap agreements that you have to click on. Obviously, you have to use their software, you have to use their browser. So, who's going to read all that fine print? So some of the information that I feel that they have, your travel information in the past, for example, I mean, to the extent, I'm just giving you to the extent in which they collect that information. Your IP addresses, incoming referral links, download history, record contacts, purchase product. Why we are learning about this? Did you even think like why is it, if I may ask, if anyone wants to volunteer and answer, why are we reading all this? Is it useful? Because at all times we need to stay on course. We need to be objective and understand why we are learning certain things.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, doesn't it sort of manipulate the future results you get, right? When you're doing
Absolutely.
searches, so, okay.
Absolutely. The reason why we are learning this, Eliza, and everybody, for your information, is because these are barriers. These are influencers. These are the type of information that's not going to bring the neutral results for us. Okay, there would be situations when you don't want the search engine to get some information that is more localized, which is coming from the area that you are browsing from. You don't have to use the VPNs all the time to break out of that geographic zone and to go on to other servers. You don't want the search engines to be influenced by the type of laptop, for instance, that you searched for a few days ago, to keep appearing all the time. You don't want all those ads to keep showing up. Why? Because here you're doing a product research, you're doing a price research, you want to get out of that geographic boundaries. You want the search to find the most rational result based on the wordings you have used, the way you have crafted those queries. So even if you've done the best job in building the best search queries, it's not going to bring back to you the kind of results that you expect or what it should, or maybe you're missing out on a lot of information because of this, right? So this is why we are learning. Then we've got profile and personal info, but this is FYI right now. It's not something that's going to have a great deal of questions in the exams. These are on the conceptual side. By the way, just so you all know, starting day after tomorrow, the next, I guess, our third and the fourth class, which is before the weekend, we would be starting with the search queries. We will be starting with basic search queries. Also learn about some of the advanced search operators. So all that exciting things, something that you can relate to, something that you really want to know more about, that's going to start showing up. That's what I'm going to be teaching. So after this class, we will call it like all the basic or the groundwork got done. And then we are going to get to the real thing. So we have a combination of illustrations that are obviously going to be part of the slides, but at the same times we will be actually executing those queries live using the browser. So it's not going to be just the theoretical part, it's going to be a mix of both. And at the same time, I would be inviting you to participate more frequently, more I guess, in a way that that you are able to give me some challenges or ask me questions that, or situational questions for creating certain search queries. You would have that opportunity. So you would have your say to do few things and give me situations where I can assist you to or to walk you through those situations with building those search queries. After we get to the, and there would be three areas in, I'm not sure how many of you have read the syllabus or at least the outline of, the lectures and all that. But the short of all that is that the search queries are divided into three portions. One is the basic search, where we're going to do the Boolean operators, then we're going to do advanced search, and then the third would be the complex search queries. So we will go one step at a time. And for the reason of learning things systematically, I wouldn't encourage for us to really get too excited or go too much further, into, taking up those challenges of building complex queries while we are still doing basic. So if we go stepwise, it will be more systematic. But at the same time, I can guarantee you that we will not be leaving out anything for which you have a question or something that you did not understand. We'll have plenty of time to answer the questions and run those queries live online. Should be assurance enough. And like when I say three parts, I don't mention it for any other module or any other topics, but especially when we get into to the web search queries, please remember three portions. Will start basic. Some of you would already be more proficient in some basic stuff that we'll be learning, but at the same time, don't think that that's all there is to it. So even with the basic search operators, there are so many complications. We will run through the basic search operators, starting from just the initial level introduction, which some of you might just find boring. It won't take too long. It's going to be painful for maybe 5-10 minutes. After that, we will start building the momentum and create more complexities for you to recognize some of the more creative ways in which you can use basic search operator. So, it's just advance notice and for you to know. Now, let's see how much time we've got. We're 5 minutes over, and I started a little bit late. If you have 5 to 7 minutes, we can finish this chart. We'll be done with this portion. If any one of you have to go, please, by all means. I know it's a long day. Many of you are on the East Coast. So without any more talks, let's look at the next portion. We've got profile and personal information. It is actually separated under these headings. So profile and personal information has obvious information like autofill forms, for example, like that information stays there, but it's not to be used. It is just an information of convenience. It is not actually transferred or transported to the search engine site. So you have to protect your own machine. The mechanical portion of where you're using that device is what is to be secured. So not to worry about autofill. Payment methods, they have certain ways of securing that. So, even if it's mentioned here, think of it as the type of information that is not exposed or publicly available. However, it is there and it is used in certain ways. Ways that won't really harm you or damage you in any way or create any financial losses. However, it has an influence in search results. In what ways, we can debate that like all day long. I can tell you just the information about credit cards could have several dimensions in several ways in which this information is made useful for those clients who are paying or those credit card companies or banks that are really paying a lot of money to Google to collect these pieces of information. But at the same time, we are not really covering all individually, all of these. There is a communication data, which is again a short and a long term. But the long-term history that is mentioned here specifically within the brackets is stated as long-term. So it is specifically in the long-term area, where short and long term there's portion to it. I just want to go down quickly in the chart so that I can mention few factors which would actually proceed from just the collection or implicit collection or the implicity of the information that goes beyond. So let's look at the intent translation. So so the layers are now settling down. From the first layer, we're going down to the second layer. Just look at the arrow right here. Now it is going to start to build intent translation. So how it is doing that? It is giving you a broader perspective in these boxes that is mentioned with just one word that gives you a general picture of it. So personalization is the keyword. Personalization means that it is now captured enough information that it is going to assume that it is making a better user experience for you by delivering what it feels is more pertinent to your needs or for your objective of search. Localization, marketing, trends. Now, trends is the kind of information that would have an influence only when you're doing seasonal purchases. If you're looking for clothing in winter time, let's say even if it's jean, it's just going to start showing warm jeans. It's going to show winter wear and so on. Advertisements are your intent obviously is now being shared and advertisements will start popping up. And some of the ways that advertisements show up are really a big influencer in search results. And I'll show you why. Even if it's organically generated, it still has a large impact in your research part. And I want to get to that, but I can't get there faster. So just bear with me. Now, let's go deeper. Now, what is the third layer? The third layer is going to be the analysis part. Analysis means that it is going to start to go to the next level of analytics. It has its own systematic algorithms which work independently of each other. Did you know that search engine does not have like one single algorithm for everything? It is a collection of a la carte softwares or different algorithms or different sort of mathematical computations, even if we call it lexical or semantically inclined or artificial intelligence, call it natural language processing, call it whatever, call it machine learning, whatever. Thing is that collectively they are a suite of algorithms. So certain algorithms work in a certain way, like for image search, for instance, while you are doing image search using search queries to find a picture, photo, or whatever, you are thinking that it's coming from your Google search, you're going to create a search query for it, which is going to be totally different algorithm and a totally different process from when you're doing your image search. So if you are clicking on something that allows you to do image search, it is now in a different mode. Your browser is taking you to another algorithmic software, which is really an OCR or comparison or a sort of translation of images into a language which allows for you to match certain things with each other. Attributes of pictures, pixels, densities, dimensions, everything is going to be sort of compared. Feature sets, if it's a face, everything will start, but that's a separate algorithm. So while we are looking at the browser and we are thinking that it is the Google browser that is doing it, algorithms are going to be the same for one process to the next one. That's not true to make things even more complicated for you. It's not a good news, but so okay. So when it is doing analysis, it is using different algorithms. For instance, when it has gotten all that information, intent translation at a grand level, starting from the very top, goes down, second layer, third layer comes in, where analysis starts to play a part. One of the algorithms is going to start throwing suggestions. It comes as, I guess they use the word suggestion, I don't quite remember exactly, but suggestions start to show up. Related searches start to show up, right, on the browser. Autofill forms, people also ask, autocomplete, so they show up. Sometimes they do and other times they don't. So there is another factor, which is the consistency. So why is it that while you are using certain words or doing certain search queries, people also ask, question box appears, and in other search when you're using different words, just the selection of words or maybe the sequence in which you use those words would not show you the search, people ask questions. So where did that disappear? I'm just making a point here that these are all different algorithms that have a different set of signals and different set of um, um, intelligence built in it. And the last one is how it is going to influence your search results. At the bottom, it says effect on search results, location revealed, legal implications, content settings. We ought to do this or cover this later because I don't want to take more of your time. There is one factor that we will look at when we are dealing with effect on search results, and that is the concept of filter bubble. Filter bubble is easy to explain. We have already talked about it, so it would take a few minutes, but I want to be more descriptive with the illustration to give you an example with the chart that is there. And I'll just do a few clicks and you'll understand what it is about. By the way, there is a TED talk about filter bubble. It's very nice. I might have a link for it. I'll keep it for you the next time. It's interesting. You can just go and look at that speech. So let's, I'm just going to review where we are at just to gauge how far we are into this. Okay, the last thing, we know what short term and long term is. Uno momento, Daniel. Daniel, you there?
Yes,
Hello?
I am not hurry at all. You can keep it 30 minutes. Don't worry.
Okay, this is the last one. See, the last concept, even though this is the first concept of how the search is going to interpret your intent, besides and beyond what you have written, I'm just giving you a general concept of the interpretation, or you could say that it preps itself or prepares the search engine to attend to your search queries by recognizing the way you are writing your words or the type of information you're writing while you're writing it. So it's in milliseconds. And what are those interpretations of your writing or whatever query, let's just call it query, that you're putting in the address box. It's going to start to break it into 4 different kinds of query sets. Why? Because it is giving an overview, a general picture, or alerting or triggering a sequence which is going to tell the search engine of what type of response or in what context it needs to attend to that to search query. Okay, so let's just look at it while we are typing. There is one type that is called navigational. Navigational means, and this is a nice chart to give you an overview. Navigational means I want to go. That means the user knows the domain name, it knows where it wants to go to. It could even be just a link that it's just copied and pasted, or a bookmark. Then there is another one. It's not in the same sequence, but let's follow this chart. The other one is transactional query. Means that the way you're writing information you're putting in is going to detect if it's going to be organized or giving a heads up to the search engine to respond for a transactional search query, or in response to a query that requires for search to bring back 2 sets of results. One is a commercial nature and the other one is for the purchase, which means that you are ready to buy. So in translating it in simple words, transactional query would mean I want to check at this point while you're still typing. When you get done, it would know if you want to compare something, if it is of commercial nature, or you are ready to buy something. So it would know that, and it's going to trigger a kind of algorithm or kind of theorem that's going to bring to you e-commerce sites or more popular online buying sites for any purchases you're doing. So mind that. So it's you know, like this is where the intent translation has already started while you're typing it. Another one, last one, informational. If you are exploring something, you want to find, you're going from one page to another, you were cross-linking, you're going from one set of information and then copying those words, and then all of a sudden, you know, you go to the next session and plug that words into another search, another set of words, or in the address bar in the same sense, except that you've used different words. So it is going to start mapping all that, and it would know if it is informational query or you're exploring something that you don't know of exactly, but you're trying to find. So it would prep the search engine, or make the search engine to respond in a certain way. It's just a preparedness even before the search results get returned. So influencers are far too many. Implicit and implied influences are too many out there. Our job would really be, the objective would really be for building those search queries is to make it so tight, to make it so exact, to foresee, to interpret even before the search results are returned to us, so that we can organize and we can actually systematically plan the search. With this, I'm just going to conclude today's lecture. And to all of you who were not able to attend because of the situation with the scheduling and all that, I apologize profoundly, and I'll make it up to you. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Unless there is a question. Unless there is a question. Yes.
I have a practical question a bit is,
Yes.
you have already actualized the PowerPoint presentation, because I couldn't find some of the slides you have shown here.
Which ones?
Okay, the PowerPoint presentation, you have already actualized it, or is the same you give us in the
Dropbox?
Yes, in the Dropbox.
Okay, I have a day tomorrow without taking the class. I would get the time to actually go through all of that. I really want to get through all of those folders, and while I'm doing that, I'm just going to take care of this as well, to match and see if everything is complete. And if it is something that's missing, I'll ensure that come Thursday morning, it'll all be cleaned up. Because I don't know, because I just didn't go to every single folder to do the audit, which I should. So I'll do that, Daniel.
Okay.
Just know one thing though.
I was looking for some of these slides in the presentation you gave us.
Yeah.
I didn't find a lot of them.
No, I didn't either. I thank you for asking that, Daniel, because I was wondering the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, so just give me a day, because I just would do that for you tomorrow. In fact, tonight I have to go somewhere, so I'll do it first thing in the morning, Toronto time. So by 11:30ish in the morning, I would have updated everything. I also need an assistant that is not available to me right now. So collect all my resources, and I promise you I'll take care of it for you. Thank you for pointing out. I don't know exactly every bit of stuff that is there. So I'm just going to compare notes and make sure. By the way, just for your information, the book itself, the 5.0 version training guide, has everything in it. So if for any reason you feel that in between today and tomorrow you need
Perfect.
to, yeah, just go into the book. It's a PDF. Just go Control F, write the term, and it's just going to show up. You won't like it. There's nothing that we teach here that's not in the CIRS training guide. Just for the time being that I get these slides sorted out.
No problem. Thank you.
All right.
That's very
Thank you
helpful.
very much. Have a nice evening, all of you.
Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
you for your time.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. Bye bye.